Hi, this is Pastor Daryl Myatt from Keller, Texas. Today is Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. This channel is all about world news, Bible prophecy, end-time events, and the return of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I finally had a couple of days off, and I think I'm a little more wiped out than I am when I'm working all the time. Took Moloch and River on a camping trip overnight. We must have hiked 20 miles yesterday and probably another 15 today. Had a great time swimming, hiking, climbing, camping, just having some fun and fellowship. It was a good time. Anyway, so many things happening around the world, and especially around Israel. It's just an amazing time to be a Christian watching biblical events coming into play. Out of Ynet News, U.S. Embassy opens in Jerusalem. Says when Trump makes a promise, he keeps it. Trump says the embassy move has been a long time coming after the United States has failed to acknowledge the obvious for many years. President Donald Trump's the only president to fulfill his promise to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. This was the message repeated by all the speakers at the inauguration ceremony for the new U.S. Embassy in the Israeli capital yesterday. Trump's daughter Ivanka, son-in-law Jared Kushner, Treasury Secretary, said only Trump had the courage to act on what America has wanted for a long time. While presidents before him had backed down from their pledge to move the American embassy once they were in office, this president delivered. Because when President Trump makes a promise, he keeps it. I mean, I can remember Obama saying Jerusalem must be the undivided capital of the Jewish people, and Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And then he signed the waiver 16 total times to keep from moving the embassy there. Trump had the courage to do so. Israel is pretty thrilled. Of course, all the Muslims, the Arabs, and the Palestinians are hating it. Out of Ynet News, 57-nation Organization of Islamic Cooperation condemns U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem. The world's largest body of Muslim-majority nations says it strongly rejects and condemns the White House deplorable action to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Interesting, they used one of Hillary Clinton's words. Also interesting, not one single Democrat attended this embassy inauguration. Not one. Why do you think that is? Because they don't support Israel. Honestly, they don't seem to support America anymore. They support illegal aliens. They support Palestinians, another made-up group of people, and they support Iran. Those who seek America's destruction, while President Trump is trying to make America great again. Seems this country is becoming more and more divided. Of course, there's been some horrible atrocities happening over along the Gaza border. Abbas pans the new U.S. Embassy as a settlement outpost in Jerusalem. Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, out of the Times of Israel, that's the headline. Settlement outpost in Jerusalem. Settlement outpost, really? This is the leader of the made-up people that the world is trying to make Israel make peace with. They don't recognize Israel as a Jewish nation. They don't recognize Israel's right to exist, yet they want everyone to recognize Palestinians' right to exist. They're not willing to do what they're asking the world to do for them. They're not willing to do for Israel what they're asking the world to do for them. Out of Israel National News, headline says Trump won't demand anything from Israel for embassy move. You know, a while back it was thought that there would be a heavy price to pay for this embassy move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But now the talk is, yeah, that's not going to happen. There won't be a heavy price to pay. Out of Israel National News, Naftali Bennett says we will never even discuss dividing Jerusalem. Here we are the day after the embassy move, still kind of waiting to hear Donald Trump's peace plan. It should be coming out, I would think, probably this week, tomorrow, Thursday. Surely by Friday. Who knows? I guess it remains to be seen, though. How about this out of Free Beacon? Iranian group offers $100,000 to blow up the new U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. Isn't that some kind of crime? Isn't that against the law? Hasn't Iran broken the law by offering someone $100,000 to go blow up a U.S. embassy? Anywhere. Doesn't matter where. A hardline Iranian organization is reportedly offering a $100,000 reward to any person who bombs the newly opened U.S. embassy in Jerusalem, according to a translation of Farsi language reports. That's illegal, right? Anyone going to do anything about this? Or is it okay because, it's against something there in Israel? But it's against the Americans. Gaza suffers the most horrific day of violence for 4 years. So many in Gaza. Hamas sending women and children to Gaza's borders. Some 40,000 Palestinians flocked to Gaza's border. It was clear that the day would end with death. You see video of people taking bolt cutters and cutting the fence, trying to break through, slinging fire bombs, throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails and all kinds of things, trying to invade, it looks like. I saw Nikki Haley speaking at the UN saying Israel has every right to defend their borders. Every member state sitting here in this room would have done the same thing if people were doing this at your border. Israel responds. They're protecting their people. They're like, you're going to throw fire bombs and all kinds of things here and you're going to try to invade our border? We're going to stop you. Israel's made it clear. They said, look, don't try to breach our borders. We will stop you. They tried to breach the borders. They've been stopped. Don't know how many dozens have to die. Netanyahu, out of Ynet News. Netanyahu calls Israeli actions in Gaza self-defense against Hamas. Israel's actions on the Gaza border, where dozens of Palestinians were killed during mass protests on Monday, were self-defense against the enclave's ruling Hamas terror group. He said every country has an obligation to defend its borders. The Hamas terrorist organization declares it intends to destroy Israel and sends thousands to breach the border fence in order to achieve this goal. We will continue to act with determination to protect our sovereignty and our citizens. How about this? Out of the White House, from the Jerusalem Post, responsibility for Gaza death squarely with Hamas, the White House says. 52 Gazan protesters died, but ultimately the responsibility goes to Hamas, not the IDF, says the Trump administration. If you're going to send 40,000 people to the border with the intention of storming the border and destroying Israel, who's really to blame? The one bringing the offensive or one defending themselves? Israel was using drones with cameras and tear gas to try to get these people out of there. They were trying everything they could to not have to engage with force. Out of Haaretz, high alert, U.S. Marines deployed to protect American embassies in the Middle East after embassy move. Isn't that something? Last administration, there was this embassy in Benghazi. There were calls that they needed protection. Seemed like those calls fell on deaf ears. Many in that embassy were killed, including the ambassador. This president has the forethought to say, you know what, let's send the Marines to go protect all our embassies in the Middle East. We're not going to have a Benghazi under my watch. Think what you want. This president is acting to protect America and to protect Israel. And if you really have a problem with that, then you really have a problem. Just saying. Now, I'm not saying Trump is perfect. I'm not saying he's everything he says he is. But he's kept a lot of his campaign promises when the last several presidents did not. The Bible tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Psalm 122, verse 6. I mean, what presidents said since 1995 that they were going to do, but exercised their congressional waiver instead. President Donald J. Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Trump said presidents issued these waivers under the belief that delaying the recognition of Jerusalem would advance the cause of peace. It would be folly to assume that repeating the exact same formula would now produce a different or better result. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Acknowledging this as a fact is a necessary condition for achieving peace. You know, John Hagee and Robert Jeffress were there to pray over the embassy, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Of course, they quoted Psalm 122, verse 6. But then, of course, the lamestream media, you know, CNN, ABC, CBS, New York Times, they criticize John Hagee and Robert Jeffress for their conservative point of view on Christianity, on Israel, referring to them, of course, as bigots, Islamophobes, and all other kind of isms and phobes and, you know, names that they love to slang against people who know the truth. It seems like the media and the left-leaning liberals align with Islam. You know, I think they're more afraid of Islam. They don't want to offend them because they know Muslims will kill them for speaking against their cult from hell. Out of Turkey, Erdogan said Israel is a terrorist state. Oh, man. These are amazing times. You know, Isaiah told us that they would call good evil and evil good. Here we are. Let's jump right into the Word. In Luke 19, verse 7, it says, "And when they saw it, they all murmured, saying that he was gone to be guest with a man that is a sinner." Here was Jesus going to Zacchaeus' house, and they're like, he's going to a sinner's house. Isn't it funny? People still do this. You know, guess what? We're all sinners. So if Jesus went to anyone's house, he would have gone to a sinner's house. Did you sing the song when you were a kid in Sunday school? Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. Bring back memories. You know the story, though, right? I mean, Zacchaeus is a tax collector. He basically turned on his own people. He got rich by cheating his own people. You know, the tax collectors in his day were far more honest than they are now. Yeah, no, they weren't. They've always been crooks. But in Zacchaeus' day, they would collect the tax that was due, but they would always collect more. And the extra that they collected went right to their pockets. And sometimes they would even go to the leaders and say, well, this person only paid this much, thinking that was enough. And, you know, sometimes they would get by with that. And, of course, the tax collector would just keep that much more. So this led to Zacchaeus leading probably a pretty isolated life, you know, hated by his fellow Jews, probably didn't have a whole lot of friends. He was probably lonely, maybe afraid, maybe a little anxious. I don't know, but here was Jesus coming to town. Zacchaeus got up that tree just to get a glimpse of him. And Jesus was working his way through the crowd. People were pressing into him, trying to touch him, wanting to get near him, just wanted to see him. Jesus looked up, and there was Zacchaeus, literally, out on a limb. Jesus stopped. I mean, Zacchaeus must have kind of frozen with fear when their eyes locked, and he's like, oh, he's looking at me. He's looking right at me. What do you do? And then I'm sure he was probably shocked when Jesus kind of invited himself over to Zacchaeus' house. I'm sure the Lord just smiled with amusement and love for Zacchaeus. So, how would you react if you knew Jesus was coming by today? Would you climb a tree to get a glimpse of him? Or would you press in the crowd? In the 80s, I went to a lot of rock concerts. And not just rock concerts, but other concerts too. And I had a knack for making my way to the stage. I could always get through the crowd. I'm pretty sure if I saw Jesus in a crowd, I could make my way directly to him. But what would you do? Would you climb a tree? Would you be okay with Jesus coming to your house and spending a little time with you? Would you be embarrassed? I don't think Jesus takes into account the words of hatred and the words of criticism spoken against you by others. We all get that. We all get hated on. We all get criticized. We all get called names for preaching the Word of God. I would feel like I wasn't doing something right if I didn't have a few people sending me some nasty message every day. It's kind of like a badge of courage anymore. It just strengthens me. But Jesus sees you as a treasure. He wants to spend time at your house. He loves you. And He cares about you. Don't ever forget that. In Jeremiah 33, starting in verse 1, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah the second time, while he was yet shut up in the court of the prison, saying, thus saith the Lord, the maker thereof, the Lord that formed it, to establish it. The Lord is His name. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not. I'll show you mighty things you don't even know about. You ever notice that there's always these books on how to speak publicly, how to communicate effectively? You can go to any bookstore, take your pick from any volume dedicated to public speaking or preaching or any other kind of communication. Learning how to speak effectively, I'm sure, is a big industry. There's big money in it, of course. But I think what's even more important is learning how to communicate with the Lord. Learning how to get on your knees and just talk with God. I think far too often people take what they learn from these mass communication books and they try to apply it to prayer. They think, man, if I can just craftily bring each word about in my petition and my phrasing and my fancy biblical words and throw in a few these and thous and whithersoever. Some people think if they just say the right combination of things, they'll learn how to unlock the mysteries of heaven and have God speak to them directly. I don't think that's what God hears. That Pharisee was speaking so eloquently, and, oh, God, I thank thee that I tithe, and I do this, and I do that, and I thank you that I'm not like that guy. And Jesus said, this guy over here who just beat his chest and couldn't even look up and said, Father, forgive me, a sinner. Jesus said, this man is justified. Not that one over there with all his fancy words, his long prayer, and his well-phrased communication. We should never come before God's throne with the presumption that we just have to find the right words to say, the right combination of words in order to get him to speak. I mean, the power is not in what we say, but what he says. You know, our role in praying to God isn't to impress God with our fancy words and our great grammar and our excellent phrasing and our incredible vocabulary. It's to cry out to him, to express to him our needs, and then listen. You see, sadly, I think a lot of times we miss out on what God says because we're too busy doing all the talking. We don't stop to listen to that still small voice. The Bible tells us it's a still small voice. You know what you have to do when it's a still small voice? You have to stop and listen and get a little closer. Right? Stop talking and draw closer. So this week, as you pray for the peace of Jerusalem, as you pray for Israel, as you pray for Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, as you pray for those Palestinians that are going to the border for all the wrong reasons, pray for their safety. As you're praying to God, try a different approach this week. Find a quiet place, somewhere you can get alone. Little quiet time with the Lord, and open yourself up to what he might be telling you when you finish praying. And just see, because you know what? God is looking for someone who's available. He's looking for availability. In Luke 2:24, and to offer a sacrifice according to that which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. You know, this Old Testament passage that's being referred to is in Leviticus 12, verses 6 through 8. That's where the Lord commanded a lamb and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a prescribed sacrifice. You know, if the woman was unable to offer a lamb, then 2 young pigeons or 2 turtle doves were acceptable. I mean, Mary would not have offered the smaller offering if it had been in her power to provide the lamb. Okay? So this shows us, this reveals to us that Joseph and Mary weren't well off financially. They weren't rich, but God chose them to be the earthly parents of his only begotten Son. That's such an incredible honor. Imagine if you had been chosen. What an amazing selection that would have been. I mean, you see, God doesn't choose the way man chooses. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. Mary and Joseph were chosen when they were completely without. They were without fame, without money, without power, without prestige, without authority, without position. God entrusted the most precious gift that he had to a couple who would have most definitely been overlooked if man had been conducting this same search. Right? Man would have thought, let's put him in this palace over here where this prince has millions and millions of dollars. He can raise the only begotten Son of God up properly. Not what God wanted. Not what God had planned. God's not looking for ability. God is looking for availability. Have you made yourself available to God? Have you ever said, here am I, Lord, use me. Use me for your glory. Use me today for your plan. Use me for your kingdom. Use me to lead someone to the cross of Christ that they may receive salvation from you, Father. Have you ever made yourself available? Choose this day who you shall serve. God will choose you too if you'll make yourself available to him. How available are you? Are you too busy for the Lord? Are you doing too many things to be able to work for the kingdom? In 1 Corinthians 1, starting in verse 26, "For you see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. And base things of the world, and things which are despised, has God chosen. Yes, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence." Here am I, Lord. Use me. That should be your prayer. I love you guys. God bless you. Good Lord willing, I'll see you again tomorrow.